Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back on this December morning. Crazy. Christmas is right around the corner. That is my favorite holiday. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you've enjoyed some Christmas music already, boys and girls. Christmas season is so short. But all that about Christmas in our Bible story, although it sounded like last week we were setting the stage for baby Jesus, while the story was similar, it's not actually baby Jesus because we're still back in the book of Judges, boys and girls, in the Old Testament, the 7th book of the Old Testament. We aren't anywhere near the Gospels, but we will, with Christmas, talk about Jesus. But it was pointed out to me how many similarities there were. Yeah, Peter pointed it out. Peter's a smart one. How many similarities there were to last week's story to Jesus coming, and that there was an angel who predicted the birth of Samson. Well, boys and girls, there's not much about Samson growing up, believe it or not. In the end of chapter 13 talks about Samson's birth. The next, chapter 14, we jump right into the fact that Samson wants to get married. So we kind of speed through the beginning of his life with not much detail. Well, Samson, he wants to get married, and he really wants to get married, and he didn't find a wife among the Israelites, boys and girls. Remember, God has a special plan. He's supposed to be the beginning of the deliverance from the Philistines, but Samson has found a wife among the Philistines. He didn't keep himself separate. He went to the Philistines, and that's where he found his wife, among the Philistines. Well, he comes home, he tells his mom and dad, he's like, I found a wife. She's beautiful. She's a Philistine. And his parents weren't too happy. They're like, wait, God has a special plan for you. How can you find a wife amongst the Philistines? Well, we learned that Samson's a pretty stubborn man, and he's going to have what he wants to have. And you better not stand in the way of Samson is basically what we're going to find out, boys and girls, as we go through this story. Samson is very strong, as Peter just showed us there. Samson is very, very, very powerful. We're going to find out about some different instances in Samson's life where we can see that power. But it's probably important that I point out right here that the Bible tells us multiple times that the power comes from the Spirit of the Lord. It wasn't from Samson. Samson's power, Samson's strength comes from the Spirit of the Lord because the Spirit was upon him. If you remember, boys and girls, there were 3 things that were supposed to characterize the life of Samson. Samson wasn't supposed to drink any wine or strong drink, wasn't supposed to eat anything unclean, and he wasn't supposed to cut his hair. Well, Samson finds this wife that he wants, and he's going to go travel. He's going to go see her. He's walking along, and a lion comes out. Like, yeah, Peter, I'd be afraid of a lion too. Peter's going to hide behind me from the lion. So a lion comes. No problem for Samson. Samson just walks over with his bare hands and kills that lion. Just destroys him. Leaves him there for dead. Oh, wow. Boys and girls, when I go to the zoo, I'm really glad that there's something between me and the lion at the zoo. I can't imagine the strength that Samson had to just kill that lion with his own bare hands, but he does. Kills the lion, sets the lion aside, goes on, visits the lady that he wants to marry. And then he goes back home. The Bible tells us a bit of time passes, and Samson's headed back to see this lady, and he's walking along, traveling, and he comes along that carcass of the lion. He sees the lion there, and he sees something inside of the lion that might scare Peter and I almost as much, maybe not quite as much. Peter and I both have a bee allergy. So inside of the lion, though, he sees these bees. They've made a nest inside of the lion, and those bees are making honey. Oh, that just looks so good. I like honey, and Peter likes honey too. But Samson's walking by, and he's like, ooh, that looks awful tasty. I want some of that. So he eats some of that honey, and he shares some of that honey with his mom and dad. Well, he heads on to where the Philistines are, and he's prepared to get married, and they're going to have this huge feast. And the Philistines give Samson, it calls him 30 companions, 30 men. And Samson's with these 30 men, and he says, I've got a riddle to tell you. He says in Yeah, a riddle, like a knock-knock joke, kind of. He says, if you can figure out this riddle, I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of clothes, or 30 garments. He says, if you can solve the riddle, basically one for each of these men. And he says, you have the 7 days of this feast in which to solve the riddle. So the men are like, all right, tell us the riddle. Well, boys and girls, we're in chapter number 14 of Judges. Verse number 14 gives the riddle. And he said unto them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. They thought about it. They talked amongst themselves. They're like, all right, there's 30 of us. Surely we can come up with an answer to this riddle. I don't know about you boys and girls, if you like riddles. There's a few kids on Wednesday nights who like to try to stump me with riddles. They got me with a watermelon one. I had no idea what they were talking about. But this riddle, he tells them the riddle, and he's like, you have to tell me in the 7 days of the feast. And they're talking. What do you think, Peter? Do you have the answer? No, Peter doesn't have the answer. Now, of course, I've read the story, boys and girls, so I had the answer that way. But, and they're talking, and they're like, we can't figure it out. If we don't figure it out, we owe Samson 30 changes of clothes, and we don't want to pay Samson 30 changes of clothes. So they're like, who can give us the answer? Who would you go to get the, well, God could, but Peter, they don't believe in God. They believe in a false God, Dagon. But that's true. We should go to God. They're like, his wife. As this is their marriage feast. We're going to go talk to Samson's wife and figure out what the answer to the riddle is. So they go and ask the wife. And I mean, surely the wife knows, right? No. The wife doesn't know. She can't tell them. So they start to threaten her. They said, you tell us or we're going to burn you. We're going to kill you and we're going to kill your dad. We're going to burn you, your dad, and your father's house. It's all going to be burnt. She's like, okay, I'll find out. I'll figure that out for you. I don't want any harm coming to my dad, boys and girls. I hope you don't want harm coming to your dad. And so she's like, I'll find out. So she goes to Samson and she says, Samson, tell me. I'm your wife. Like, let me know the answer to the riddle. He goes, nope, I haven't even told my mom and dad. I'm not telling you the answer to the riddle. Oh, man. She's starting to sweat. Like, what am I going to do? I've got to figure out this riddle. They're going to kill my dad. I've got to figure this out. So what do we do, boys and girls, when we really want something? We keep asking, and we keep asking, and we keep asking, and we whine, and we cry, and we pull out the teddy bear tears, the puppy dog tears, and sometimes our parents and teachers, myself included, will be like, fine, you can have it. I'm tired of hearing you. And that's kind of what happened. Samson's like, all right, I'm tired of hearing you complain. And he tells her the answer to the riddle. Well, what does she do with the riddle, boys and girls? She goes and tells the 30 men. The Bible tells us in verse 18 of chapter 14, and the men of the city said unto him, so they come to Samson like, we got it. We know the answer to your riddle. On the 7th day, before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. He says, if you hadn't gone to my wife, you wouldn't have figured out the riddle. So he gets angry. And boys and girls, when Samson gets angry, you don't stand in Samson's way. Samson gets so angry, he goes out, he kills 30 men, brings back the changes of clothes and the spoil that he had made from killing those 30 men and gives it to the other 30 men. And then he pouts and goes home. Well, when he goes home, Samson's new father-in-law gives Samson's wife to a friend. And boys and girls, that's just not going to go well either. But there is so much more to tell about the life of Samson, but we have run out of time this morning. But boys and girls, we need to remember to do things in God's time. Samson's not doing things God's way. And he's with the Philistines where he's not supposed to be. And it's going to lead to bad things for Samson. Boys and girls, I hope this week that when you do, like Peter pointed out for us, if there's something you're having trouble figuring out, like a riddle or a math test or something else, that your answer is to run to God, not to other people. Have a good week.